I haven't last week. Yeah, we, so, okay. Well, now we talk about showing off for your career. Okay.
That's exactly what we talked about.
I haven't heard that. So we'll be reflective of where we left off last week if we don't have anything else. You gotta give me a second, find it,
What are you looking for?
the spreadsheet last week. I haven't. Was not prepared.
Yeah, we're just waiting to get the spreadsheet up on the screen.
I mean, we can start to do minutes and stuff while I find it.
Yeah.
I didn't do that if you want. Start recording.
So nobody has any objection, and I can be the acting chairperson for tonight. That's okay. First meeting.
Thank you, Stu.
Okay. Recording started, I believe, so I'd like to call the meeting of the March 6, 2024 CIP committee to order. Item number 2 is present to speak. First, we'll start with any people in the room. Were they able to speak? No, or?
Hi, Mike McCoo, Clover Springs Drive. I would, having attended the last few meetings and Board of Finance meetings, I have, what I hope is taken as a friendly suggestion that the time between the various members of this group be managed a little more equally. One member of this group has monopolized 70 to 80% of the airtime during the meetings and has very good ideas, but I think they're getting lost in the endless debate. And other members of the committee either are not or don't get a chance to participate, and then they sometimes get interrupted. I think it makes the ideas that person have get lost, and I think it would be more effective if the time was managed better. I think it is incumbent upon the chair to manage that if it is not done organically and naturally. So I hope we would get maybe shorter meetings and better service to the townspeople if we could balance out the different contributions to the meetings. Thank you.
I'm right here, Mike, and if you talk about me, but you can just talk to me directly, but that's fine.
Well, it was present to speak to the committee.
Yeah, that's good. Thank you for those points, Mike. And I'll speak to anything at this point, or
Not at this point. I would just like to weigh in if possible during discussion if anything comes up about emergency services. If the committee would allow that.
does any of our online visitors wish to say anything for present to speak? I think that is enough. All right. Approval of minutes.
Sure, I would say that. What did you have?
So we got a bunch of minutes here, and I'll look through quickly to see the things, and I know they're very detailed, so
That looks great.
I'm optimistic that there's nothing changed at this point.
That's correct.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure that's right.
Yes.
If not,
Does anybody have any discussion about the minutes?
Yep.
Okay. All right, I'll entertain a motion to accept the minutes of February 28th, 2024.
Move to accept.
Thank you, Jim. Jim,
second.
thank you, Jim. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Anybody opposed?
I'm abstaining because I wasn't.
Okay. That is abstaining. Oh, good.
Yeah,
Because you don't have unanimous yet, and you're hybrid, you have to do a roll call.
Okay, so.
sorry.
Steph is abstaining, and we'll go backwards in terms of, Jim, myself, Jen, and
Aye.
Melissa, you voted, in favor of accepting the minutes.
Yes, voted aye.
Alrighty. Next item is CIP year 1. Does anybody know how that was? Did they get presented to the selectmen and or the Board of Finance
Yes,
last week?
Yes, it did.
it did without having approved board of selectmen, but it by the board of selectmen, but it was discussed, and I believe the board of selectmen last Thursday voted to approve their 2,000 percentage. For So, with that being said, you know, I argue we don't necessarily need to consider anything set in stone, if changes arise, but.
We didn't act on it. It's not being presented to the Board of Finance until the 14th. Is that what you mean?
That's what I mean.
Okay.
CIP is.
But like say next week, you know, when Christina's here, I mean, if we want to try to work toward that to approve it, I think that'd be very good. Because it was noted that the selectmen didn't have an approved budget when they put it on the table. It'd be better not to be in a draft form. I think at this phase, it's getting pretty late. We have tomorrow night is the first of 3 meetings that are now on the schedule for deliberations and appropriations on Board of Finance. And I would call that the home stretch. So.
Question of clarity, you did not approve year one in last
We did,
week's
vote-
meeting?
we voted to approve your.
Oh, okay,
Yeah.
all right, I misunderstood what was being, so
CIP
your
committee approved it to pass it. to the
CIP
selectmen.
did, yes, okay, sorry, I misunderstood.
Okay. I misunderstood that too.
Yeah, so, because we knew they had to get something in hand, and we kind of, excuse the expression, beat it to death, but lengthy discussion was had by all, and, we felt we had to move forward with, you know, call for approval within the CIP, and we did that and passed it on to the selectmen. The reason I inquired about what happened to it, did the selectmen make any changes, or Board of Finance make any changes yet?
Right.
It doesn't necessarily come back to us at this point, but it could.
Just as a
Could I-
question, I don't think Board of Selectmen actually approved the plan, they just.
They did not. They approved their budget. They did approve it Monday.
Okay.
Yeah. So. It's in essence that's in that, yeah. So I didn't hear a lot of discussion about it.
Yeah, it's early yet.
No,
Yeah.
It's,
Good work.
so,
So it's made it through 2 of like 5 steps.
yes. Okay. Yeah, so, it's got a few more to go. So that was year one. Anything else you want to discuss about year one?
Could you like recap what changes you made?
let me see.
The only one I know is that you guys moved the bunker gear enough for each department to have 4 sets. Right, which is,
Right,
is that
so-
10,500,
Right, so-
or I mean, 20,500 each?
Each, yeah, Lisa. So it was felt after much discussion, and you've been around long enough to see it go both ways. Is to push it
It doesn't
back.
comment on my age, because I'll accept it if it is.
There you go.
That's me.
I get the gray hairs to prove it. That the bunker gear is a recurring item, it's a year by year, I mean, that figure, roughly speaking, is probably gonna be there most every year. Between what gear is expired, what gear is damaged, new members joining, that sort of thing. So it was felt that it would be better put into the operating budget as opposed to the capital budget.
I got it up on the screen now if you want, so.
The one advantage we've seen in the past, and that really had to do with the Board of Ed doing carpets and paint, like 2 classrooms a year. And that used to be in round figures of $10,000 each, so it's 20,000. You knew it got spent for that project, that it didn't
Right,
get
we diverted to
used for
something else.
used for
Yeah.
something else. So that's the one advantage of keeping it in the CIP is you know that's what it's going for. However, since the bills are all paid by the town for both departments now, you'll be able to clearly see in the reports that come out of the finance office. You know, if that money is approved in the annual operating budget, you'll be able to see exactly where it's spent.
So it's really kind of late to make an opinion, by the way.
I know too late to have an
Okay.
opinion. I don't know if anything would change.
Well, here's the thing. All things being equal, I kind of, at first I was on the side of put it in the operating, because it's just gonna keep going and, you know, then it's just there. The thing I like about CIP though is we don't have that much experience with the new is it OSHA standards or emergency services standards?
Yeah.
All that stuff that, we don't have much history really guiding that yet, and I'd like to see, in some ways, I think it makes sense to see, is that the pacing, it's really going to be, and if in a given year, if there is something that sort of could be put off, I sort of, I think that's a CIP exercise more than it is.
So in terms of
Operating budget.
history with OSHA, OSHA's been guiding us for around 30 or 40 years probably. And the change in the NFPA standard that is now being enforced by OSHA was 10 years.
Right.
To throw your gear out.
Right, I know.
And
That's what I'm saying, though, we don't have that much history
So
with
we
that part of it, that's the part I'm saying.
in Willington one, we have an extensive spreadsheet of every single member that's been issued gear,
Mhm.
what year it was built, when it's gonna expire, what condition it's in. And,
Understood,
again, knowing all that data is estimating, what we need. And I assume Willington Hill went through the same exercise in
Mhm.
terms of looking at it, how many they need. So I think the figure is pretty well balanced in facts. And the need is still there.
I just don't, I guess I'm not as persuaded it's a perfect science as far as amount. And it just feels,
It's, I mean,
it may be this first year.
you're only talking 4 sets, so,
Yeah.
are you, do you wanna reduce it to 3 or increase it to 5?
No, I just don't, I feel like we're presuming it's going to work with a specificity as if there's no turnover and staff requiring, different bunker gear or something like that.
Doesn't the Board of Finance have the ability to assess that budget every year? I mean, it's a.
we don't go that deep into line by line. That's what I'm saying. I'm saying, it's not like there's a lot of checks and balances in our system, frankly. We don't do, the Board of Finance does not audit, and the auditors probably don't audit to that degree.
We don't.
So,
I mean,
well,
do you
I
feel like the
think
money
it's-
wouldn't be spent for bunker gear?
well, you told me it wasn't when it was in there before,
You're right, when things break and
Yeah.
it's coming to the end of the year,
right?
and you have a choice of keeping an ambulance operational on the road or buying a set of bunker gear, yeah, we skip it. Is the need still there? And what happens is it piles up. It goes, instead of getting 2 sets, so now it's 4. And if you only buy 2 the following year, you're further behind,
Mhm.
And that's how we ended up, needing, CIP money in the past to do this. The grants that we've gotten from, FEMA have helped. We got 20 sets one year, but that was 20 years ago, or 20 years ago.
So I'm just saying, if you do have a situation where there's like another emergency that needs some fast attention, that's a perfect example of a time when you come to the Board of Finance to say, we've got this other situation, but it's not gonna take away from something that you guys are describing as a need to spend on this matter to stay right with OSHA and right with the safety of our members.
Yeah.
That's
Can I
all,
make- can I
that's
make a
all I'm
comment
saying.
about it?
You guys already voted on it.
If I can just make a comment, with the new OSHA, not only the OSHA regulations, but the new cancer bills, we're not gonna have a choice. Being able to take money out of gear and putting it somewhere else isn't gonna be an option anymore. We're going to have 2 sets of gear
Mhm.
for every interior firefighter. We're gonna have to have it, like Hill's gonna have it, we're not gonna have a choice, and that's being driven by OSHA. That's why there's such an urgency.
So the concern is, if I'm hearing you right, is that the concern is that they're not gonna spend it for the purpose, if it's a budgetary item, that's not.
Well, we already have an experience of that, so, yeah.
So is there more oversight in CIP over that, I guess is my question, it's dedicated straight to that, so I see that point, it would be
Yeah.
allocated just to that purpose. I have a problem with it being like a recurring Fund 17 issue that's not budgeted for as well, because Fund 17 is gonna get underwater with all the equipment purchases as well, which is
We-
a lot of the.
We have that in other instances too. We do it consistently with reval, so,
So that's why we push it to the Board of Finance, and they can
yeah.
decide to put it back in CIP if that's how they see fit.
I hear your arguments though, and all arguments, and And I think, I understand why you made that decision you made.
Can I just make a comment for Willington Hill? The experience is exactly as everyone's saying, and it's both ways. And as Stuart commented, in the cycles, I've been attending budget meetings for 35 years now. In the cycle, with the changes of the board and changes of economic conditions, this exact conversation happens over and over and over again on CIP and at Board of Finance. And even at Board of Selectmen sometimes, and it gets driven to one budget or another budget, depending on a lot of different factors. And sometimes you're told that doesn't belong here, it belongs there. And then 3 years later, you're told very
I know.
emphatically, that doesn't belong
Why is
here,
that there?
it belongs
Yeah.
there. We've had, other departments have had the same debate. Carpet at the schools was a big topic a few years ago. Should carpet be, because it's a wear and tear item, should it be operational? Or should it be capital because it's part of the capital asset of the building? You
Yeah.
can debate it both ways.
Yeah.
It's been debated both ways.
Right,
The other thing to experience with the gear is with turnover of people, we get gear back in good condition sometimes, but it might be the short person who turns in gear that's in good condition.
and then you get
And then
a
a
tall
tall
person.
person joins,
Happens every single time.
right? And so now you have this expensive set of gear in perfect condition sitting there, waiting until you get the next shorter person that it can fit. Because fit is a critical requirement
Critical
also.
issue, yeah, we have really good.
So the
explanation of
answer
that.
is there's no good answer.
Okay,
Yeah.
okay, well, I could just, since I'm on both boards, just love the one I'm with and agree with you guys, this was the smartest choice you've ever made. And then
Debate
be on the Board of
tomorrow.
Finance and see. No, I'm just kidding, no, I get it.
I just have a question. I feel like the door was open for me, so I'm gonna ask my question about Fund 17. We talked about it last week. Do we have any additional clarification on, what comes out of that fund? Like real directions about what comes out of that fund?
Contract language.
Yeah. So each fire department has a contract between the department and the town. And detailed in there is some level of detail of, what it can be used for. I don't think there's a list of things that it can't be used for.
Correct.
And,
Priorities.
you know,
It's priorities.
it's supposed to benefit emergency services solely, but.
That's about the only hard line.
That's
yeah.
a broad stroke, you know, it talks about the specifications for the ambulance, we come from Willington #1. But other than that, you know, over the 20+ years it's been used, you know, it's been fire trucks, ambulances, payroll, and, you know, sort of other small projects.
But my sense is that because fire trucks, you know, and have such an escalating value and they always have had a big value to a town, that it was that was looked at as a more primary thing. The equipment side was looked at as a more primary thing, a way to sort of put money aside so it's not this big, you know, heavy impact. And when, in my experience, which is not as vast as yours is, Stu, and Mike's, but we really didn't tap it that much for payroll and operating at all. I don't think should be really tapped regularly with it. But if we start getting into the payroll thing, it's sort of like, we did that one year where we put 60 grand out of 17, and then we, you know, because we were in real trouble that year, that was when there was a lot of changes in the process and the status of the fund. So we did that as a one-time thing. And then we sort of winnowed off in the last full budget year experience, we did 10,000 this year. And then the year we're in, it was doubled to 20. You guys, your proposal was to double it again to 40 this year. So, you know, that's like something we wanted to get totally away from, that sort of creeping up. So my feeling is it's really like, for an emergency, if there's like a budget year where we just have to do it, I suppose we tap it. But I would rather not see it be systemic, because I think
I would certainly agree with that, you know, I think at the very least in spirit, Fund 17 wasn't made to do payroll. Payroll can stand on its own, the costs are what they are. You know, it comes down to basically how many hours a week you fund, there was a cost involved with that. To use Fund 17, you know, I think Donna raised the expected income to 175,000 up from the 145. Just based on the last couple of
Yeah, I
years
saw,
of
you
revenue.
brought that up, yeah.
Which,
that
but
does.
if you look at the sheet, the separate one that Donna has for the fund balances, you know, in the out years, that's gonna go down. I mean, I think Willington Hill is what, 990,000, Mike, for a new truck in there?
I don't remember what the number is.
It's,
I thought it was 800.
It was
it's
eight something.
850 right now. is what was-
So Hampton just bought one, it was in the newspaper the other day, 1.1 million.
I'm not
And
surprised.
they're predicting, the one I read today for, I think it was Munson, 4 years they got a truck now. Is that,
It's,
Yeah.
32 to 48 months for new truck
Yeah.
deliveries from signing a contract.
and so the manufacturers aren't even though you sign a contract with them, there's clauses in there now that they don't want the price. That they could coming back, you know, 2 years after you signed the initial contract and the wait for the chassis to come in, oh, that's gonna be another $200,000.
Yeah, all the more reason to me,
And so, you know,
to use that
the
asset.
ability to continue to buy fire apparatus based on, you know, moderately, minor increases in income, there may be a time that Fund 17 won't be able to pay for the next big fire truck.
Right,
I mean, I think that's long and short of it, is that the equipment purchases are far exceeding. The goal of this, both on the fire department side and on CIP, is to ideally try to get away from leasing as much as possible or minimize. And kind of rating the Fund 17 for payroll for one, but for other purchases, like we have moved it, the parking lot repair as a Fund 17
mhm,
to reduce Pete's budget. You know, it's short-sighted and doesn't do us well. So I think even in year one, we pulled the ambulance payroll 10,000 out, put everything back to a capital outlay and transferred the gear out, because that's a separate debate that we just had, but, the reality is we have an $850,000 fire truck sitting there as a placeholder in year 4, probably an ambulance in year 6. And I mean, this is,
well, the way you
That's-
package that observation, I'm feeling better about leaving the bunker gear in the other in the department level.
yeah, I mean, we're still gonna we're gonna have to finance trucks, but maybe we
I
can finance
understand.
this, or maybe we get to a point where we don't have to finance one of them.
It's just, it's sort of, yeah, and part of it is like a sort of, psychological thing, whereas, you know, if you see that fund grow enough that you're at least making a good stab at handling the big cost, I think that's more palatable, I would think it is to, taxpayers than something that's, a resource that we can go after in the budget year to balance an operating budget.
Jim,
That's
did you
my
find the
point.
contract?
Yeah, I had it up on the screen a minute ago.
It
Oh,
does,
okay.
it does,
Alright.
it does list.
Okay, I have it
payroll.
also,
It
but
does
if
list
you've got it.
payroll.
I can share it again.
Yeah.
Give me a second.
Jen has her hand up.
Jen, you get your hand up? Go ahead. Oh,
Oh, unmute.
I just forgot to put it down, sorry.
Oh, okay. Did that answer your question though? Except we're still
No.
gonna quote from it.
So,
It does say specifically something.
you guys can all see this, right? There you go.
Oh,
Jim,
It's replaced-
Jim, I appreciate you putting that up there.
Can you see it?
Oh, well, yeah, I can. Yep.
I mean, I can read it, but it's in priority, I guess, here, the replacement of an ambulance every 4 to 6 years, associated ambulance costs such as collection agency fees. It does say that it can include labor costs for paid ambulance personnel. And then the purchase of equipment, fire trucks, et cetera. So it is all in there, but I think the large point is, you know, how do we continue to get ahead of funding
Right.
major
Well, I have a
vehicle purchases?
question. I have a question about that too, and maybe it's a not this board question, but like if our priority is different than the priorities that were listed in there, like Jim, you've talked a lot about replacing fire trucks and we should just not touch that money. I apologize if I'm misquoting you, but my understanding is don't touch that money. That's for fire trucks. So I feel like this is as clear as mud, kind of. Like if we go in order of those priorities, I would think an exercise to do every year would be, okay, let's go through the list and see if there's anything in 1, anything in 2, anything in 3, anything, whatever. So if the town boards feel like the priority for Fund 17 is fire trucks, I feel like that's something that needs to be clarified.
I don't believe at the time this contract was written, those are listed in order of priority. I think all of those are considered priorities in general, but 3 doesn't necessarily go at the end of the list any more than 1 or 2. But they're all items to be under consideration, for the use of Fund 17.
And it does say later on that this board and the Board of Finance will consider each year what the forecast looks like. So the priorities may vary quite a bit. What trucks are coming up due to replacement, what the fund is looking like, and we do debate it every year. on
You
the
know,
finance.
in terms of what I consider some of the somewhat miscellaneous projects that get assigned to Fund 17, those are definitely, fall within the income that we have. It's that new fire truck that's coming at some point that's gonna break the bank. And they said that may be, a truck that you can maybe only pay part of out of Fund 17. But the fact that, from, like, what year is CT 249?
2011?
11?
No, hang on, I know it.
I actually have.
I can't conjure it up right now. It's right around that.
So I believe the expense on that year was 475,000 that came from the town for that.
Yes, it was a CIP.
And now
request.
you're looking at double for more or less the same truck as at least what's been
Yeah.
proposed so far. It isn't the inflation that people are experiencing with food and oil and things like that. It's,
2011, okay. Yeah.
it's, many times that, and we really don't know why. We have no control over it.
It's running about 1% per month right now.
Just asking, was this committee given the apparatus list and replacement schedule?
Yeah, I
Snyder
think,
and
I think,
did,
yeah, but I don't think, Willington Hills stuff,
Chief
it was
Snyder
one.
did it just a couple days ago.
Yeah.
Oh, okay, I didn't see
Chief
that.
Snyder sent it to Christina, I believe, today.
It has not been.
Oh, well, she's not here, she's on vacation.
We finished it Tuesday night at the firehouse.
Then, did you send it to the Board of Finance as well?
That I'm not sure. I
Okay,
know ours,
'cause I-
went, I don't know.
Okay, well, if we got it, I could share it with Board of Finance. But, okay, so a newer truck is the one that you guys, your newest truck, right?
Yes.
What year was that? Did we buy that one?
17, we got it in 18.
And that was, what was the price tag on it?
750.
Yeah, so that's not that far away from, but is that like a more,
If we were to
a
buy
big,
that truck now.
is that a more
probably 1 point,
not more important, but a bigger truck, yeah?
yes. That truck.
1.1, that's,
1.1, 1.2.
yeah,
So
Yeah.
that's what you gotta watch for that fund balance of Fund 17 is what's coming out of that. And when it comes time for, roughly year 4, plus or minus a few years, depending on availability and need, that, how are we gonna pay for that one?
yeah.
Here's another fun fact.
Fun fact,
Takes 2.5 years for them to get it, once you pay for it, or once you put it.
I know, and so does
So
it
we
go
have
up?
it in year 4,
Yeah,
So,
should it really be a year 2 expenditure?
so one of the things that we're having issue, or what we're seeing with other departments is that they're ordering the truck, they're being told it's $850,000. And then a year later, they're being told there's a 10% hike. And their towns are having to go back for 10%.
I'm sure they're not gonna just forgive
Right.
that
And
timeframe.
I would say
Some towns are fighting it successfully, saying we have a contract.
Absolutely.
And they're successfully fighting it. Other vendors are saying we have things beyond our control, where you're gonna use force majeure, all this other
Yeah, there's
stuff.
a lot of-
They're wins and losses.
Yes.
But we should, and if we do,
We should
if we do that
anticipate.
situation, we should do a contract up front.
if they're willing to.
If they're willing, that's the other part, is a
Yeah.
lot of these vendors are putting a clause in there that the escalation is going to be charged to the town.
Well, then maybe you guys charge a fee for getting it so late.
I guess. We did do that with the
Right,
last
if you have to
truck. We had
rent
a,
something or.
We had a $100 a day late clause. We told them to pick a date, but let's say we put out a bid for the ambulance or fire trucks. And one says I can deliver it in 1 year, one says I can deliver it in 4 years. But the year one guy might be more expensive, but at least you get it 3 years earlier and you know it's not gonna go up. Who do you pick? You know, do you wanna wait 4 years for a truck?
But you guys need funding in place to place that order and then sit on hold for 2.5 years. Correct.
Yes.
There also are other ways to navigate. Donna has, in her role, managed some different ways of, bonding. Like the town bonding directly and initiating a bond at a certain point that is advantageous to the town. And then the payment may not get made for the particular item right away, but that was the advantageous time maybe with rates to secure the bond. And some of these even you get prepayment, bonuses.
Yep.
Or reductions in the price.
You know, what they,
For
I think what
prepayments, you just pay it all in advance.
what they're typically demanding now, especially for an ambulance, is they want payment for that chassis as soon as they get a VIN number.
So,
And that does generate a small discount for that. I know with the 2015 ambulance, I think we started paying on it like a year and a half before we got it. But in essence, it paid it off earlier, so it probably didn't, you know, matter a whole lot.
But I mean, for our needs here in years 2 through 5, Stu, is this piece of equipment a year 4 purchase? That's really a year 6, 7 need, or is it a?
That's a question for Willington Hills, that's their truck that they're.
Oh, sorry, I
Get
thought
it
it was-
replaced.
And I know we talked about this a little bit when you guys did your presentation, and I think we just left it as, oh, we'll deal with years 2 through 5 later. Which is a problem, again.
So what would you say about that, Mike?
So it's a little bit of anyone's guess at this point. That truck has had two major body repairs already due to rust. No, it's had one major body repair and it needs the second. It's due, it's rusting out again.
It's pushing 30, right?
It's a 96. So that truck doesn't have a fire pump in it. It may come a little faster and it depends on the manufacturer, as both Stuart and Alex said. Different manufacturers have different timelines. And so there are a lot of variables. I think the delivery time has to be taken into account. I think that maybe a little earlier, probably, or a split difference, you know, might be effective, because if the goal is to have it, I would say by the fact it's rusting pretty well right now, that maybe it doesn't last till that point and then the 3 or 4 years to get it. But there's also hope the market improves, the delivery times start coming back soon. But so far they keep extending.
Hey, and I don't wanna talk out of turn, but I've talked to Chief Steiner a few times, and they're not set in stone exactly what they're getting. There's still some options of, do you remount the box that you have under your
Right.
cab and chassis? Do you get a new rescue truck, or do you retire the 149 as well and buy a squad or something along that line? So it's far enough out that just know that there's a big chunk of money is gonna be needed. And it may be more than the figure that they request, maybe less.
Right, and honestly, if the town goes through with the facilities, fire station location study, some of the discussion in there about what equipment is needed, what services are being used, where they're used in town, may help inform a decision about what type of truck is purchased next, or exactly what you talked about, do you combine 2 trucks into one or whatever? So it can't happen next year probably, but.
So the only concern I have is if we wait and it's 5 years, do we have to put a significant amount of money repairing a truck, only then have to replace it soon after anyway? Because that's, you know, we're looking at $250,000 to invest in a truck that we're trying to get rid of. Just because we need it for service and operation, I have a big problem with that, and that's,
Like,
and
then
us
it
pushing
becomes
things out, like,
inefficient.
then it becomes station 1, you know, then it became station 13, excuse me, then it becomes a lot of things where we defer so long that it gets worse.
Yeah, but you have a good point about the planning stage that we're embarking on too.
I
That's
think
interesting.
9 months from now, when CIP starts on time this year, I hope, this will be a much more, hopefully we'll have more information to debate this better.
So what year is it in, what year is it in now?
Monthly in there.
Is it in
It's in year 4.
4?
Yeah, that's how they submitted, and that's how we have it currently. I'm wondering, you know, as best guess, do we consider knowing that the lead time is a couple of years out, we just push it up a year?
Or maybe they already took that into account when they put in the request to go for year 4, knowing that it's gonna take.
Yeah, I don't
That's why I
have
asked
the,
that
I don't have the, I don't have the ability, I tried texting Chief Snyder because I wasn't in the meeting where that prioritization was made at the firehouse. I was working.
I mean, ultimately, we start off by trusting the department head. That's the year they asked for it. That's our starting point to put it in. And, if you wanted to move it out or make it sooner, I'm sure he knows how to call a meeting and we can, do something like that. But I think it's probably premature tonight to be moving that
Something,
around with
yeah,
not
without
enough information
Having an
there
official.
for what kind of truck and everything like that.
Do you have anything to say, Donna, about the sort of, I don't know enough about it to even articulate it well, but to have the funds availability in the right year, knowing, you know, that you may have a 2-year wait or whatever, like, does it, what's the problem with having it like 2 years earlier than you're actually gonna need to pay up, or, you know, like, does that mess with?
So it's going to be, lease financing. So this happened in the past. We closed on a lease and borrowed the money and the vehicle wasn't ready. So that was okay. We just put the money, in escrow and waited for the, vehicle to be received. And we started making payments on the lease.
I mean, ultimately, with leases, you can move them forward or back a little bit. If you were really, really broke, you can actually defer the payment a year and start paying 6 months to a year after you receive it. Do you pay interest on that? Absolutely.
Oh, yeah.
Yes.
And if you start paying on it a little bit early, you know, so you hopefully save some money on the interest, but the overall length of time and the total repay isn't significantly different. It just kind of shifts the timeline a little bit of, you know, if you start paying for it a year or two early, it might open up something a year or two earlier for the next round after that one's paid off.
I mean, these discussions all get simpler if we actually have a capital reserve, you know, that takes the edge off of some of this. And Fund 17 has got its own animal. I don't think it's ever gonna get there based on, unless there's some alternative agreement that helps the fund. You know, that
Also,
increases
population
funding.
doubles or something like that. I know some of the other towns I've talked to, down in the Wyndhams and, eastward from there, they have a capital fund that they get money from the town each year set aside to buy big ticket items like the fire trucks. Do they always have 100%? No. I think the one I saw for Hampton, they took a significant amount of ARPA money that they still had. And the capital fund that they set aside, which was $300,000 or $400,000, and then the remainder of that, you know, so they were able to pay for about half the truck up front and only had to lease the half of the value, so to speak, which, you know, reduces your interest if you can do that. So there's many different ways to do that, and I know Donna looks at it every time, you know, is it going out with other vehicles at the same time, or maybe it's not, you know, what terms, you know, how long do you want to lease it? Do you, every, you know, 5 years, 7 years, 10 years, I mean, but if I'm pushing $1 million, maybe you do push it up to 10 years. Generally, the heavy fire trucks last 10 years, but you're paying interest that entire time too.
Yeah, right, that's the downside of leasing. Is this sort of big shiny vehicle phenomenon, it does grow out of COVID, right? Where the supplies were, that and the oil spike, prices of oil-based products and stuff. What grew it and what's keeping it there now? Is it a game? Like the fear is gone, but the problem's still there?
Well, lack of manpower is a big part of it, that, you know, one story I heard recently, one of the ambulance factories, they have like 400 orders that they have orders for that they'd like to ship, but they're down 100 employees and that hasn't recovered. That people have either the workforce or went somewhere else, or something like that, and they're just short-handed, they can't make trucks as fast as they could before.
It's a very different workforce that we have now.
So that's a story from one
Co-
manufacturer.
COVID had a double whammy effect because it did exactly this. It screwed up the supply chain and the workforce. And also the funding that was inserted into the economy, like ARPA and stuff like that, has increased the orders. You know, for example, we saw Willington one happened to buy a
Definitely
used
did it.
ambulance,
Yeah,
but the people who sold that used ambulance bought a new one.
right.
And many people went out and bought new ambulances with ARPA funds. So the order volume going into those manufacturers has been increasing while their ability to produce for those orders is decreasing. So it's spreading, the gap is spreading. Production is not as good, orders are going up, so the delays are just compounding. And so the backlog's getting bigger and bigger, even if they increase production, they're not even matching what the rate of new orders coming in.
Right.
is. So, and then all of a sudden they get a shortage on a particular component. For a
Or,
while it was radiators and it was wiring harnesses.
Yeah, and we're seeing the same thing with public works stuff too.
yeah, I mean, we get
It's the
You
same
know,
components.
pushed around the block quite a bit trying to get that pickup truck for the DPW director. That we have a contract signed, ready to go. The truck
Alright.
is being delivered. Oh, you know, first thing, yeah, how about we cancel that? Well, no, we have a contract. And the end was, yeah, we're not gonna sell it to you. And that's
Yeah,
back to the
right.
drawing board, where can we find a truck?
We changed makes or something.
The way Ford is doing, orders now is they open an ordering period. And they take as many orders as they think they can make during, say, 6 months. They stop the orders. They said, okay, we'll make this many trucks for 6 months. I'll see you in 6 months for everybody else that wants to guess. And you hope you get mine. So the crazy business is not what it used to be.
Yeah,
But
yeah, I can
Days
see
of being
that.
able to order a truck and having it in 4 months is gone.
Yeah, who knew?
Right.
Who knew? You'd think they'd be jumping up and down. I just wonder about the guys online, if you guys are still with us and interested in this or had any questions, because I can barely see you. Yeah, Jen?
No, I was just,
Oh, you're just saying I'm good?
I was trying to play a game here, but I reformatted the sheet, it's not the version that's in.
So any other questions on emergency services? Either probably
I was
years
trying
2
to.
through 5, you got a big fire coming. You got some miscellaneous
Yeah.
stuff, we'll let the board of finance decide on, things like bumper gear or paving a parking lot or something like that.
Well, I think we need to weigh in on what this, to a degree, which we did
Which we have,
on your one, so those are taken care of.
and so, especially for the board of
Yeah.
finance member that's here, you know, I'm sure Christine will do the same, bring the message back, and then, we'll see where the chips fall from there.
A couple of other things, Steph, just again, this number had been reduced, the local, oh, you can't,
I don't have a
if
point.
I do them too much, then nobody can see.
It's hard to see. So what were you gonna say?
The local funds in year one were reduced to hit a target, so instead of, it was like 70 something, now it's 31. It was done before our meeting, line 3.
Okay,
The other changes in here, where we reduced the grant for the salt shed down to the 350 from the 1 million asked for. Because the reality is, we don't feel like there's any motivation to go above and beyond what we think we're getting from the unused grant funding.
yes, so you took it down to, yeah.
So what we think is available from the grant fund.
Actually, I was talking to someone today who had a really good idea that I just wanna mention
Please do.
about the salt shed. And it seems to be this thing that we'd all like to get out from under at some point. It's, the thinking was, and okay, you guys may know more about this than I do, but this person knew something about it. There's a big ass salt shed in Union. Right? Is that a state?
The state.
Facility?
Referring to the one on 190, just,
Yes.
Above the highway there.
Yeah,
Yeah, that's a state DOT.
okay. But is there a connection with that? Is that salt shed something that we might be able to make use of in a storm, since it is nearby? In some kind of partnership, or maybe even an acknowledgement that the state also signed off on our being a PSA with Union? Would that be kind of a nice you know, tit for
There's
tat,
a salt shed in
to
Willington.
use that. No, but I'm saying rather than build our own, you
No,
know,
no,
whatever.
state DOT has a
Oh.
almost identical salt
Is it?
shed in Willington.
But it's not behind their facility
Yeah.
right there, is it?
Yep, right on the boat.
How come you can't see the big cone head on it?
It's just hidden away a little bit, but it's. a
Oh,
very-
it is.
It's a very
Oh.
similar facility,
I mean, is there something
I
there
would
that,
suspect if there was an emergency in terms of like, there's no salt, we can't get salt, nobody has salt except the state. Would they give us? Some to get through one storm, maybe, to go to a kind of a overall structural change of, hey, you know, if we wanna go down and fill up our trucks, we just gotta keep track of it and give us a bill. Unless you have some really good contacts at the state, and maybe Troy does, but I certainly don't, I'm not sure anybody else around here does, I don't see that happening. In concept, it's not bad, you got a perfectly good building, let's just buy some extra salt for us and we'll go there and fill up.
it seems kind of crazy to spend this much money, especially with all the road issues we have, and maybe they would like the idea of addressing our road issues. That steep money could go toward, we have all these big projects we've put out 30 years on the plan, you know? It just seems smarter to me, either the Union facility or the facility right in our own town. You know, some kind of partnership there, good neighbor from the state option. I just wanna wonder if we've really tried to make those contacts, because, you know, it fits in with the first selectman's talk about partnerships, you know, he's talked about it with the, you know, animal rescue, with the animal facility in town, and what's the other one that he was just talking about? Sharing services with, we share services anyway,
Assessor.
everything, with,
The assessor.
right. So, well, we already have done that, but there was another one he was talking about looking into. But anyway, I'm just thinking, is there a better answer there that keeps us from spending $500,000 to $1 million to build a new salt shed? Because what it grew out of was the famous October storm 10 years ago or whatever,
Yeah.
right?
Well,
And that was, of course, abnormally early in the season for a storm like that. We haven't had anything like that again. I'm not saying that, you know, there's not enough specific science to show what our winters are gonna be like under what we know is happening in the planet. But it's not likely that, I mean, even this year, we've had a couple of big fluffy storms, but we're not having, you know, a Currier and Ives year, at least in the last.
but yeah, I
decade.
think that, you know, that idea is worth investigating, but I think it's something more appropriate for the selectmen and the public works foreman, to probably
Oh, I
talk
do too. I'm
with,
just,
with the, probably, the
it's
state
put into
budget,
our plan though.
you know, our state senator, and stuff like that,
Yeah.
and see if they can
Yeah.
get some compensation. I don't know if it's being done anywhere else, not that we can't be the first.
I know, why
but-
not?
The why not, I'm skeptical of state government in general of, them going, oh yeah, that's a great idea, let's do that.
Well, sometime, I mean, we are a tinier than normal town. It might, you know, there may be a little bit of give there just because the scale of it is different.
If I may say, we do have a lot to move.
Oh, sorry, okay.
And no, it's,
go ahead.
I'm just saying it's a year one thing, I only, you know, I do wanna give us time to talk about all the other things in years 2 through 5. I don't mean to cut you off on that.
No, that's okay.
But it's already in year one, we just reduced it to the 350.
It just could make a big difference, yeah.
It's a more realistic value of perhaps what is available and what is hoped for.
But also given the needs, I think.
You know, grant applications are gonna be a big thing, another article that was in the paper was Hampton, Stafford, and one other town that I forget, they got some significant grants from that TRIP grant. Which I think they're kind of going for now for, I think, but Hampton got $880,000 to pave the rail trail. And it's a gee, wouldn't it like a falling down bridge be more important than paving the trail that people ride on? So apparently there's a lot of money there and, you know, who knows how competitive the grant is and who's applying for it, but for what they gave Hampton for 800, almost $900,000 is significant.
When you guys edited that figure though, were you thinking that's enough to do it?
We're thinking, given the priorities, the other priorities and down, the fact that nobody wants to raise
So-
taxes. Funded in year one.
I was around when
No,
the
but
$1 million
I guess
plan
I'm,
came out.
what I'm asking, are you talking about a smaller facility or are you talking about more steep? Or what are you counting on when you do that?
Yeah, that, it sounded in the prior meeting that we weren't willing to commit to spending any more funds on this,
Okay.
while we we're gonna reimburse the
Gotcha.
grant. So we just said there's no point in showing it as $1 million figure.
The original $1 million plan came probably from 3 public works directors ago. And it was a total reconfiguration of the site. And part of it was putting, the salt shed up against the hillside, and putting the fuel tank somewhere else, and so on and so on. But they had to replace the fuel tanks because of age, so that project's already been done, and it's parked in a place that wasn't originally in that $1 million plan. The, one of the cost factors in trying to put the salt shed up into the hillside, it was estimated $100,000 to move the dirt. So not only you have the cost of the salt shed, you had $100,000 just to shovel the dirt out of the hillside to make it happen.
We don't even know if Pete's still checking up on the grant funding. He wasn't at the meeting last week.
Okay.
He's not here again tonight, so we
Yeah.
don't know if he's made any progress on that, whether the funds are available, but there's no point in
So-
doing much more with it.
We think that the 350 is more realistic number than the 1 million. Partially because the fuel tanks are already done, that was like 20,000, I think, to do the fuel tanks or more. So we'll let it ride with that, and, you know, the state hasn't said no, the state hasn't handed us the cash yet either.
And I'm just gonna ask, because I've already been censored about talking too much, if I can't see anybody on the screen when I'm sharing, Jen, you were there, but Melissa, if you guys wanna say anything, jump in, don't raise
I
hands.
will.
And with that in mind, I got a couple of questions, but if anybody wants to talk first, I'm happy to let you.
All right, do you have questions as it pertains to the salt shed or everything else?
In general,
Okay,
salt shed.
What did the changes that you guys made in year one, what did that carve off of the total,
It added to the total
added to the total?
$35,000.
Okay,
Because it took some of those expenditures from Fund 17 and put them as a capital outlay.
okay.
So in the grand scheme of total dollars, it wasn't a significant change one way or the other. We did talk about trying to put more into the capital reserve. And, the consensus of the committee was not to do that.
Well,
Okay, but that
I was
explains to
thinking
me
the
what
same
I was confused about in Board of Finance last week when I saw the selectmen's budget. There was a $35,000 gap, that explains it. Because in
Yeah,
one
we-
place it had their budget increasing, 7, what was it, 6.7, and in the other place it was
Yep.
6.9. So that's the 9.9.
in all likelihood, yes, he probably had not quite.
But wouldn't it be the same number? Anyway, the difference was 35,000. Wouldn't that be the same in the total though? Just one pot to another, right?
The old pot is Fund 17, the new pot is the selectmen's budget capital expenditure. So
Okay.
it's an increase. to the
Okay, thank
selectmen's
you.
capital
Budget versus
budget.
on budget.
So the idea was should we tax the taxpayers more this coming year? And put that money into capital reserve? So in either, year 2 or anywhere along the line, do we have more cash on hand to pay for something if something either comes up as an emergency, or to, maybe pay off a truck early or purchase something we would have cash on hand. And the committee felt that it wasn't, advisable to go after the taxpayers' money now, just to put it in our savings account for next year.
I still very strongly disagree with that, and if I may, can I just ask a couple of quick clarifying for the new guy question? We have these school projects set as a capital reserve transfer to Fund 04. That's savings. Are they assigned funds to school projects only? Is there anything that makes those, because there was a big discussion on Board of Finance, we show it as a transfer to capital reserve fund for school projects.
Yes,
Is there anything that definitively assigns those to school projects as what I thought was the intent when I voted on it last year in Board of Finance? Because our spreadsheet on the next page lumps all that funding together,
you are correct. The table lumps it together.
but they are, like, the school funds cannot be.
Used for county projects. That is correct.
So then the question I have, we need to be tracking those separately, because they're gonna have
School
the
projects
school
and the town
project funds and
projects.
the town project funds.
Yes, correct.
Because their expenditures are gonna be different rate, and also this gives us a full sense of
Correct.
security for the general reserve. Because the reality is, that 1.6 goes away, that 1. So it's actually significantly less, and what I wonder is when we do that, if there's $31,000 going to the general fund, and then all of these outlays that come out of that I believe are transfers out of the general fund, police payments, are we in a negative balance in year 2? In the general fund outside of school budget? Are we close? I haven't done that math. It was a question I wanted to confirm first.
I'm trying really hard to follow along. I'm on a tiny screen, so it's a little bit challenging. I just want to make sure that we're talking as if like I'm a kindergartner, please.
So the general intent for, in last year's CIP was to set aside a million, these are very broad numbers, $1 million to
Yep.
go to school upgrades, repairs, whatever you wanna call
Yep.
them. They need a total, and I can't see the numbers from here, but 2.4 million total to complete the roof project, or at least to get the roof project started, committed, being able to then apply for grants to add the ventilation
Yep.
system, plan for the reimbursements from the state, and that sort of thing. So that's where that roughly 2.5 million dollars is set aside for the school next year. And that's enough to get the going. What I think Jim's intent was, instead of just listing it as part of the fund balance, which it is, but to earmark that out separately to know that that's what it's for.
So, I mean, to try to be a little clearer, Jen, we are in our 5-year budget projections for fund balances on the spreadsheet in front of you. It lumps the school funds in with our general reserve fund for other projects. But it's deceptive because they really are two separately, like, the school funds can't be touched for other stuff. So we still have to have enough money in the reserve fund that's not allocated to school projects to fund the rest of the projects in town.
Right.
And we can't, with the way this 5-year budget projection is set up, we can't judge where we're at. Is what I'm
So
trying to
are you
understand.
suggesting that we might need 2 separate and distinct 5-year plans?
No, what I'm suggesting is that we just need to do a fundo for, in this sheet right here, we need to do a fundo for a school project balance tracker.
For fund 4.
Oh, like its own little,
So that we have a fund for balance that's available for paying for everything else that's not a school project. We understand how much is
yeah,
there.
what we have to.
And then we have the school projects that we understand, because it's gonna start getting very important as we move through the years, because they're gonna have different expenditure
Yes, and so far,
significantly.
the
So,
only project so far appropriated from the school money is the study, the facility study.
correct.
These other projects in here, HMS plumbing, CES plumbing, these are appropriated from the town reserve money, not the school projects
Correct.
reserve money.
So what I'm trying to get at is if
How
we
you
have,
like another column,
yeah, so we have at the end of at the start of this, at the start of this plan on July 1, right?
Mhm,
We're saying we're projecting 1.387 million
mhm,
in the fund, but
mhm.
1.46 of that is school projects. Are we in the negative in the general fund? In the, not the general fund, in the capital reserve fund, Fund 04, for non-school projects? I think we are. Which is a problem. Which is why I didn't want to see that number reduced to 31,000. You know, initially.
And the capital reserve acts as a shock absorber, so to speak, and try to even things out over the years, that if you do have a big expense coming up, usually in an out year, you kind of set some money aside to help pay for that. It may not be as big as an actual truck, but
No, but-
it helps.
We're in the negative in year one, and we're only putting 31,000 in at the start of the year, and then we have hundreds of thousands of dollars coming out for lease payments and all that.
Donna, would you recommend making a separate fund for the school building projects?
I would do a separate sub-account in Fund 4. I wouldn't make a separate fund,
Right.
but we started the fund with $501,000. And then this year, current year, we're spending 616,000, but we're putting in, last year we put in 1,460,000.
Okay.
Okay, add a little interest.
460 of that is,
Okay, keep going, 460.
so 42 plus, so you have 501 plus
Yep.
460 plus 42. So there's about $1 million.
3, right,
Yeah.
at the end of the year. So we're gonna start July 1.
Oh, no, sorry, hold on. Am I doing my math? No, there's 501
Yep.
plus the 460,
Now, why do you say plus the 460?
because that's not allocated to
that's-
school projects.
Okay, correct, so we're just doing,
So we're at
Okay.
960 plus 42 in interest, so we're at about $1 million, and we're spending 616. So we have about 400,000 at the start of next year in the fund balance.
for town
For now.
projects.
For not counting what is destined to go to the school.
Correct. So we start the current year with about 400,000 and July 1st in that account. That's non-school related. What do we have in next year that's expenditures? Because we're only putting 31,000 into that. So we have $431,000 available July 1st in that account. We are spending in year one, but is it
We are
the
spending-
253?
Yes, but that's on town projects, on town reserve.
Mm.
We are spending $80,000 for the CES chimney
Okay,
out of that. And we are spending 200,000 for design and engineering,
280.
minus 17,500 for revale. Now, what do you have in a town account?
A little over $100,000, I think. Okay,
Okay.
so we're not negative, which is, which is good, but I
Okay.
think for at least not in year one and year two, not next year. We haven't presented a plan in year one that is negative, which is what I was worried about and wanted to make sure we had this discussion.
I see the value of having,
It's
tracking it separately.
otherwise, whenever, you know, I don't, as long as. Yeah, we have to be able to see it so that we understand how much is actually there and so that we understand when we're trying to increase 10% every year. It's really gotta be in that, like, the school projects in my mind are catch up. It's a separate, like, they need to get done. It's outside of kind of, you know, it's as if we
Everything
were
else.
bonding it almost. We still wanna play catch up on the general reserve. We're not doing that at all this year. In fact, we're depleting it to $100,000 from a starting balance of 500,000. Because we wanted to reduce it to the $31,000 transfer in this year.
And
I think it's very short-sighted and a problem. So.
Is it
but-
possible that that's
But if we.
that's an anomaly this year because of lumping together all those big projects together? And in the school, well, wait, just,
Yeah, go ahead.
and then in the way the school catch up, as you will say, plays out, we won't have that pressure. That same kind of pressure where we have to lump three together for grant reasons, timing reasons, and proximity of the projects.
If I think I'm following. And it looks
Roof,
like.
HVAC and solar is lumped now.
Mhm.
Will we have that same kind of scenario
Yes,
in the future
yeah, we're talking about.
where we
bonding.
have to do them together?
Well, I think it's, we can't
I
determine
think,
that.
Okay.
based on the list of 75, 80 items that Bill had,
Yeah.
I think many of them are unrelated
But might make sense to do
And-
together.
Yeah,
And some of them may have, not many of them, but a few of them may have some degree of reimbursement from the state. But because we're doing it such piecemeal and they only pay for specific type of projects,
right,
then, you know, it isn't like, I keep remembering, the new school, you knew what percentage they would pay overall, okay?
right.
You know, $40 million school, the state would have paid 60% or whatever the number would be.
We won't have that
We
easy.
don't know that, and the level of reimbursement is not gonna be anywhere near a similar percentage. There might be something coming back, but, the state's very particular. As Phil mentioned, like, what was it, they pay for the window replacement at center school, but they won't pay for the labor.
So,
Go figure.
so it looks like in year two, we reduced the school transfer and increased the transfer. You have
Yes.
500,000 and a million,
Yes,
a million 56.
yes,
So that is catching up a little bit because the
Yes.
expectation is year two is reduced load. My concern is, we're gonna look at next year,
yes.
selectmen's budget isn't gonna want is gonna wanna say we're reducing things, you know, and we're not gonna make that transfer, you know, so I just wanna, we really gotta get to a point where we're committed to presenting a plan that is actually getting us ahead of the game.
There's two numbers to end up with these. One is a percentage do you wanna end up with? And that is many times a political question. It's also a question that you propose to the voters. Can we get away, get away is not the right term. Can we present a 9% increase and have that pass? Or you know that whatever crystal ball you have, that's not gonna pass, and we need to cut it upfront and say, okay, we can only go in for a 6%. And that's what happens when you don't get the money into capital reserve, because you've chosen to lower that dollar amount to, I wouldn't call it an artificial amount, but a number based on being able to sell the whole budget.
Yeah.
The other side is to do a budget based on your needs. The needs may be, you know, hundreds of thousands of dollars more than what the popular level of spending would be. So do you base your budget on your needs, or do you base it on what you can sell? And that's an age-old thing every year. Willington's been
So I-
fortunate that, yep,
I just have something to say about that. I, I, I definitely can see it both ways. I can see, Jim, your adamant point about the fact that we are to be doing budgets that make sense and that are things that are realistic. I think the two things can be blended together if we as a committee are committed, pardon that, to it. I don't think it can be done this budget season, but we floated the idea of meeting on the off season. And if we do that, we can have a strategy to talk about what we see and also how to relay that to the town. Because I think there's no way, I can't imagine a way forward for a giant increase in taxes and in spending. I just can't. But I can imagine a path where we as a group come together and talk about it and then bring it to the public and talk about it and answer questions and do all the scenarios. Like, what if we don't do this? What if we do this instead? Or we'll have the opportunity to do that and then have this conversation in the budget season next year, and people will be primed for it.
the scenarios in the past, I mean, some years, I think they've brought out hundreds of thousands of dollars from the reserve into the capital spending side of things. But they have the money in the reserve to do that, which softened the blow instead of going up 400,000 for taxpayers that year. The other side of it is, you don't need anything in reserve. You do your budget and you set the mill rate based on what you need that one year. You're living paycheck to paycheck at that point.
Yeah.
So the whole reserve is trying to.
I'm sorry.
Oh, no, I'm not recommending anything, but that's the complete opposite side of it. Let's not put anything in there. And if we need, you know, $2 million for capital projects, we just put $2 million into the budget that year and hope it passes. it's not a wise thing to do, you know, everybody likes to have some savings in the bank, so when your furnace breaks at home, you have some money to pay for a furnace.
Yeah, I think we're at a stage though, in this particular year, after the referendum vote,
Yes.
after people said, we wanna fix the existing schools, knowing that it was gonna be a big fix. That it's incumbent upon us to have some forward motion that we haven't normally had in CIP. It's been very static over the years.
And that's why setting that money aside for the school project separately is definitely a good step.
Right.
For doing
Right.
that.
Jen,
I think Donna will adjust the spreadsheet accordingly, and,
Jen, I just wanna say I agree with you completely. I think this is, you know, we need to meet, we have a lot of work to get done via equipment replacement schedules, via updating this thing so it's more user friendly, figuring out, there's a lot to do. And evaluating the need, to put it bluntly. But that being said, you know, I also think we need to present the reality of the situation we're in this plan. We show a slight increase this year. But if we're bonding these projects and if we think they're viable, for example, the fire stations, that's an $11.5 million bond. We're increasing taxes by close to 3 mils in year 2.5 mils. If we bond the schools, this number is gonna go up to 4 million. There's gonna be another like 2 mil increase in year 3. That's the reality of this. Like, to say that you don't see a scenario where we can't raise taxes, okay, maybe that's the case, but then we don't do these projects. And we need to say, you know, this plan needs to either show it to the Board of Finance so they can see and hopefully garner support. Or we need to cull projects out of this and say, we don't think we can afford them because we don't think we can raise taxes. That's not our decision.
Yeah, I don't think
That's not our decision at all. So our goal is to present these in a way that is the most cost effective, but taxes are going up.
But I think,
Funding.
oh, sorry.
Go ahead.
We talked about having joint meetings, like, and I don't think we should be doing this in isolation. I think there's space for us to talk together. And again, I'm sorry to beat a dead horse, but after this budget season, I don't think we have any. I'm just trying to be real. I understand what you're talking about, Jim, and I understand what you're trying to do. And while it makes sense, like, it makes sense on some level, we also have to get something done. And if we can put this plan forward and then work on our kind of ideal, that to me makes the most sense.
I agree with that.
Yeah, I'm not saying we're gonna get all of this figured out, Jen, not in any way, shape, or form. I'm just saying we gotta present a plan that isn't $7 million in the hole in here. Even if it's ugly, knowing that we have a lot of further discussions, but you know, this is the best we can do based on the available information we have. That's not putting us $7 million in the hole by year 5. But we have to show it balanced so that we can prompt those discussions with the other boards. They have to see that we're going up, a local spending total is going up over $1 million next year, and it's probably gonna go up $1 million again. That's what this plan is, and we can't figure it out, but that's our best interpretation of how to fund this. That is our job. We don't have to get it right, it's gonna change, but we have to present, like, this is how we see this picture happening for future discussions and for Board of Finance to have a realistic understanding.
But I agree that the escalation of projects and what we're facing this year is abnormal. And that I think there's a commitment around the table to not just drop it at the, you know, in the budget season to stay with us and fine tune it. That, you know, I think we should work rigorously on that going forward together to figure this out. Because you're raising, you know, excellent points. It's just, I don't think they're gonna be resolved in 2 weeks.
the discussion that we had last week was, there's 3 big things on the table. Is the school, getting those up to where they need to be, the firehouses, and the road bond for Schofield Road, Village Hill, and Lister Road, which round figures is $3 to $4 million just for that one. Those are big structural issues that is perhaps even outside of this committee, that it would take everybody and then everybody, at least to start with, being the Board of Finance and the Board of Selectmen, and say, where do we go from here? Do we bond everything all together and get it done once and, you know, pay the price for the next 20 years? Do you spread them out, which at the end of the game, it's more or less the same cost. You may have deferred a project by a few years, but, the end cost is still the same, or you don't do it at all. And that's the only way to save money, is to cancel it permanently and forever, and not just come back to it in 2 or 3 years.
And honestly, this place too.
Yep.
I have
The
another
town.
question.
Library.
Go ahead, Jen.
Yeah, Jen?
This is so cumbersome. I apologize for not being there in person. Donna. Hi, Donna.
Hello.
Tom's on vacation right now, Jeff. This is her.
So in years 2 through 5, in my, according to my understanding, which is probably pretty limited, 2 through 5 are kind of placeholders and are very like subject to change very quickly. Is that fair to say?
I think it is.
Subject to change is up for definition. The projects that you see presented tonight for all 5 years, most of them are probably gonna be on there year after year. They're not going away unless you complete a project. It isn't like, oh, we need a salt shed, you know, and then say, now we don't need a salt shed, we'll just get rid of that and let the next committee.
Yeah.
10 years and then,
I understand that part of it, but from a planning perspective, years 2 through 5 are not, for lack of a better term, they're not set in stone. Like if we were to make a plan for years 2 through 5, Donna, they'd be very subject to change. Is that correct?
Yes, you could put a bond in for the road improvements and it doesn't pass, and then you have to rework that part of the plan.
Yep.
But your
So-
plan
Okay, she's not done.
in years 2 through 5, this is very important, because you want to stabilize the mill rate. You don't want spikes in the mill rate, so you don't wanna need $2 million from the taxpayers. If you need that much money, then you would want a bond, so it's a payment, and you have a steady increase in the mill rate.
So we need to plan, which
You
is
need to plan,
in
and
years 2 through 5.
you need to plan for a way to pay for all of the projects in the plan. If you have a plan with projects in it, but you don't have a source to fund it, you don't have a plan.
But is there anything wrong with working on the plan outside of the budget structure, the plan 2 through 5? Is it, like, could we go ahead and fine tune the plan
Are you
as we go
saying,
forward?
leave it out of balance right now and go
No,
forward?
no, I'm
I
not
think
saying
you need
that
to
at all.
bring it in
I'm
balance.
saying,
And you need to work on it all
I'm
year.
saying, do this, yeah, have it in balance, do it like, you know, we've done it before. But because there's new elements, or we're more serious about the old elements,
Yes,
you know, don't let the perfect get in the way of the good, and, you know, but keep working on this as a committee.
yes.
Fine tuning it,
And
addressing some of the
the
good, you know,
regulation-
what's wrong with that idea?
I think it's a
'Cause
good
it's-
idea.
The stuff we're talking about is rigorous enough, it couldn't possibly have happened in this truncated CIP
We're
thing.
talking, so I think everybody's agreeing to that. We've said it 8 different ways at this point. We're gonna work on the off season. We're gonna keep meeting.
Okay, well,
think we need to
cause I
vote
thought we
that.
were coming back. to-
So
But
typically the
we still
vote
need to
tonight,
balance it before we vote tonight, is what we're now.
Got that.
so the vote tonight for years 2 through 5 is not a commitment to anything in years 2 through 5. It's simply an advisory document.
Right,
And
and it doesn't go before the
And
voters.
occasionally, it's presented to the taxpayers as a whole, but come this time next year and said, oh gee, in year 2, we were gonna, you know, buy a dump truck. Well, next year comes along and, you know, maybe he had an emergency and bought one off budget somehow, which happened, I think, once. Or they say we'll defer to year, so don't be too afraid of years 2 through 5. it doesn't lock us into anything.
So it doesn't,
It's a
but
planning document, so I know, I've seen some people come back. Actually, last year you said you were gonna buy this thing, the following year, and it's now the following year, you're gonna buy it? And so, oh, no, something came up and
Yeah.
priorities changed.
No, I understand that.
But I'm gonna argue right now that we're not voting on this tonight because we have a plan in the ballot that's $7.4 million on the hole as it currently stands. So we need to figure out between now and next week, if next week is the drop dead, work somehow, Donna, however we wanna do it, to figure out a way to get this, and we can talk more about it tonight, we should. Or we can let Donna
So what's happened,
use her vacation.
what's happened in the past and, what I've seen done is the end result is you bond those 3 or 4 bonds we talked about, and that's your planning document of, the year 4 for the schools that they want, I think that requested the $5 million. We're almost past the roof thing, the end is in sight to be able to accomplish that. Yes, it'll take a couple of years to get done, but by the time we get to year 4, the Board of Ed's looking for another $5 million to put towards the schools. And realistically, we're not gonna have we're not gonna have 5 million saved up to pay for that. So you're looking back at those 3 bonds at some point of the Board of Ed, the firehouses and the roads.
So we need to do something in this sheet to finalize it so we can vote to approve it on the out years.
If the goal is to balance the years, like that, make sure that we have, money stated, not allocated, I'm not using the right words, but money represented for all of the things that we want to do. So what is and I'm not being facetious when I say this, what is the wrong thing about putting just a giant bond in for all of
Yep.
the projects that we need to do, and saying this is what it's going to cost to do all these projects together? Jim, you were talking about being real, like that's a real representation of the things that need to be done in town. And I don't know, like, if that's legal to just stick a bond in there or what, but
For tonight's purposes, I think if you simply change the funding source to those 3 or 4 big items to BO, which I believe is the abbreviation for bond on there, and said, hey, the only way to do this is to do a bond. We're not gonna have the year-to-year income to pay for these big things. You might get away with a $1 million bridge, but you can't do Schofield and Village Hill that have been deferred for decades. There's no way to do it other than a bond.
Yeah, so,
Does a bond still have to pass and all that? Absolutely, but
so maybe that's the discussion, and do we wanna see this as showing a 8 mil increase in year 3, or do we wanna try to distribute this over 5 years with multiple smaller bonds? Is that that's the balance plan that we're trying to get across? It's one or the other. I think from a planning perspective, I would prefer to see it spread out, because I don't think a single bond is gonna pass. We're not presenting a plan that we think is realistic.
So how about this to kind of move this along a little bit? The 3 or 4 big projects we got in there, which I think Don has started doing some bond calculations, and one of them, I think.
Yeah,
Where
sure.
you started to represent the annual payment as opposed to the total, is to do that for the $5 million for the school.
So we've got year 1 covered, because we're showing that as outlay out of the reserves, even though it's not where it's gonna be spent, which is the other big thing, but.
Right, so change that funding source to a bond for that 5 million for the Board of Ed project.
Year 3, 5208.
Yes.
That's gonna be a bond.
I got that.
And then there's another $6.5 million in schools, that has to be another bond. Whether it's all together,
You're
but
looking at 4 and 5, right? The 2.7.
yeah, 4 and 5,
3.7.
correct.
Oh, I make this all one bond,
If it
All
has to
one
be, it
school
has to
bond.
be, all one big school bond.
one
Good.
big school bond.
So that school bond
10
is,
million, 11 million,
what's the
12.
total? Yeah, it's roughly, gonna be a little over a million. That costs it down. So,
That is not everything.
yeah,
No,
Yeah, that has to be articulated.
but on,
that's with $1 million in for the fund transfer to the school fund account every year as well to
Yes.
cover the
Fund
roof
payment.
and the stuff and all the fun stuff. Well, that's what I'm saying. I think we need to we need to see that Fund 17 balance to see how this plays out a little bit, so.
And the, you know, the school bond for.
That's, sorry.
What's gonna,
Fund 04.
Yeah, thank you. I was like, wait,
Makes a lot more
sorry.
sense, sorry.
What did he say, 17?
Yeah, that's
Oh, it's not making that much.
you know,
for everything.
Alex
We
was
got it
good.
up a little bit, but don't give me a second.
for the school bond, you know, Phil had that list of his foreseeable projects, and he admitted that until the school study is done, things might come and go off of that.
Yeah.
Joe's on big one.
He may have to make some decisions on which ones to try to include in a bond, because they're a higher priority. You mentioned some of them that, like that, and don't call me, but the canopy over where the kids wait for the bus, which is tens of thousands of dollars kind of thing. That might not be a priority that you want to force onto a bond. You might set that aside for just to do from your year to year.
Can I-
Well, he's already
Can I-
articulated
Well,
it.
can I interrupt? I mean, so to that end.
Yeah.
Is it our job that, knowing that we're bonding and gonna be over budget and busting the bank and all this stuff, should we at least?
I think
Take a pass.
I think we represent the dollar amount that's in there now, considering how far out it is. And
I think we can pull a couple of $1 million on school projects that don't need to happen on these first 5 years, in all honesty. Like the insurance canopies, they're not a critical priority.
yeah, but I
You
would,
know,
I would send that back to working with the department head to represent that, you know, using their expertise, what they need, what their priority is, and how much can you get a bond passed for?
Yeah,
You
but
know,
I'm just saying he did that, so it is kind of our job to move these things around in a manner that we feel.
He said, he articulated, I write notes on this stuff. He said, about that, I'm looking at the one at center, I'm sure he
Yeah,
probably
there's
feels
no
the same
problem.
way about the other one. Want versus need, it's a want versus need, that's still speak for a lower priority, but still thinking it's necessary.
Yeah, and I'm not saying it's gonna disappear, it's something we probably need to increase the capital reserve fund to fund in the future.
Yes,
But,
And then other things like the window replacement in the upper wing, he says it's pressing now before the HVAC investment.
Yeah.
So, you know, he could.
he doesn't have it presented that, he might, I don't know.
yeah. So I think going up to that, you know, the 5 million or so for year 4 for the school project, additional school projects.
Mhm.
I think that's as accurate as number as you have and need at this point. You know, they're relying a lot on that study they're currently doing in terms of updating the whole kit and caboodle of the, you know, physical plant and what needs to be done. They may have updated prices. I know some of the ones Phil had were from several years ago. So the price may go up, it rarely goes down.
Yeah,
Yeah.
So I think for our planning purposes for tonight, leave that 5 million there, basically the big chunk of additional school projects, and that into the bond. Whether the bond's 4 million or 3 or 6.
well, the bond's gonna be closer to 12 if we're lumping that all together.
Yeah,
It is.
Yeah.
12 million.
So that's what I'm trying to say, like, there's stuff that we may not find that, like, we need to have these conversations, and you're right, Jen, to your point, we're not gonna do it all between
No.
now and next week, so I think, and also, Stu, to your point, I think as prices go up, the reality is he's gonna get this report back, and it's gonna cost more than what he's got in total value here. We don't have escalation factored into any of those projects yet either, it's gonna be significantly greater, it's gonna be the same thing with the fire departments. This plan is gonna look completely different, but we'll develop it next year. It's gonna look completely different next year.
and
And that's
the,
why we need to develop it as it goes over the course of the next year.
But we're having the hard discussions now about what it's lacking. And some of that is the circumstances we're in, and some of it's, the things that you're applying, Jim, with your thought about the whole 5 years and the best way to reflect, you know, to show the numbers, to isolate the schools' money in there from.
so. So part of me hates to open this up, but Jim, last week you had some discussion towards the end of the meeting and partially with Donna about doing a school bond earlier. And how it would get the roof paid off right away, but then it would give us a couple of years to save money to right down the road. Do you remember any of that?
I'm trying to, so I think it was, I think, and I'm not recalling the specific reference, but I think it was these numbers, the spending in year 1. So. to my point, I think it's related to the interest in the way that whole interest discussion, knowing that we have an account that's got $2.5 million in it, you know, that's not potentially going to be used right away. In year 3, I had proposed potentially as a solution, if it all works out this way, that all of this year 1 funding that we have, the 2.5 or the $6 million gets bonded with the year 3 funds, and then we use the funds that are sitting there to pay for the out year stuff while collecting interest on it in the meantime at a significantly higher rate than just say sitting in a savings account. Like we can allocate the stuff to a high yield savings, a CD account, something like that. It can sit for 3 years and then pay years 4 and 5, but accruing 5% interest, what, you know, like, again, these are things that I think we need to address over the next, we can start to talk more about over the next
Are
year.
we set up to do that, Donna? Because I feel like we haven't been playing this game for a long time.
I don't know,
We have
I'm
not-
asking questions.
The
if possible.
reserve fund money is
Yeah.
all invested in
Money market?
I
Or
don't know what kind
a
of
T-bill?
account it is. I couldn't tell you what kind it is,
It's getting good interest.
but it's getting very good interest.
Okay,
So-
that's what your interest kind of shows, so we're not really gonna be saving. Well, keeping it in there longer, having that capital reserve gets interest. If we spend it in year 1, we're getting a lot less interest. That was my point.
Mhm.
And I'm not going to track the interest separate on the school money
No,
or the town money.
yeah,
Because it's all in the same
Correct.
savings
Pot.
account, if you will, same pot.
yeah, the interest should, quite frankly, be used for other, you know, I think it would be better served. You know, totaling with the.
The interest comes
I-
back
I
in as
agree.
revenue anyway,
Correct,
so.
I'm agreeing with
Right,
you, so
right.
I'm gonna stop talking.
Yeah,
So,
it comes in as revenue anyway, so it would
but
be.
I think those are discussions we need to have moving forward for the purposes, we have year 1, we're showing it as an expense in year 1, all that fun, so it's irrelevant, really. Because we already voted on year 1 now. But I think it's a conversation we need to have over the next couple of months as to how best to strategize and structure the funding of the school projects and what year those bonds hit, and how we distribute that to capitalize on potential interest and minimize a 6 mil increase of, you know, like a giant bond payment,
And
which I don't want to do, so.
if you thought of just the school projects in and of itself, I'd
Yes.
say it's a very good idea. What waters it down is the timing of any other large expenditures / bonds. And, oh gee, we're gonna go for a school bond this year, and the next year we're gonna go for another one, and the next year we're gonna go for another one. You know,
Well, that's my point, I think you don't have to if you do it this way. I
well,
think you're just bonding that, we're saying we're either gonna bond year 3 for years 3, 4, and 5.
Keep going.
Or we're gonna bond years 1 and 3 and then use our built up savings to pay for year 4 and 5. Those are the 2 distinctions. I think it's more, I think financially, we're in a better position potentially if we're bonding that same amount in year 3 either way. I think it might be more advantageous if the timing works for bills, urgent roofing, HVAC projects.
but you also have to include the roads and the firehouses in there.
Yeah, and those are being treated as separate bonds at this point as well. Yeah, it's.
I
there's a
think
lot.
his original on roofs and HVAC and everything else was,
Year 3.
the work would actually happen in 96. I mean, 2026.
I know, the numbers are
Sorry.
going, yeah, year 3.
Yeah.
We don't know if that's, I don't know if it can wait that long for the HVAC grant, the work may need to be complete by the end of it, like, his timing, he'll know more.
Yeah, I just feel like he's living in it, in the middle of it. I think he's,
But he's not, I guess my point is, we're showing all the expenditures in year 1, this is the
Yeah.
discussion you missed up, but they're not really being expended. in year
no,
one.
I know, I didn't miss that. We
But-
talked
But
about
our,
that.
but our
meeting.
fund balance shows them all gone in year 1, so.
They're just being allocated, so that we don't get them, don't
Yeah,
think we have it for another
we don't
project.
spend it.
Yeah, so we don't spend it,
We
that's it, we're just allocating, so we don't
Got
spend
it.
it
I understand that.
on something else.
Kind of always been
Yeah,
there.
we actually have a similar thing going on with the ambulance payment, that we haven't been able to buy an ambulance.
Alright.
We've had money committed I think, this year, maybe from last
Yeah,
year,
we did.
towards paying for that, so when you look at the Fund 17 balance, some of that money is tied up eventually for doing the ambulance, and does that mean you can make a really good down payment and lease less money
Oh,
out of the
I
deal?
think yes.
So beware when you watch the fund balance for 17, that there's an extra, $60,000-$70,000 in there, depending on what the annual payment you had figured in there, for that.
Can I ask one other newbie question?
Yeah.
Is there any direction on which becomes a reserve fund, like what projects we allocate as a capital expenditure and what projects become reserve funds? Because I went back trying to figure it out, like I looked at last year's CIP. And in year 3, we have a bond as a capital expenditure, not as a fund of 4, which is what we're showing the
Yeah,
bond payments here. We also only showed the fire stations we had year bonded in year 3, it was a $650,000 payment that didn't then carry 3 years 4 and 5, so our fund balance was off on that one.
Okay, 930 capital expenditure.
Yes,
It's usually something you buy one shot, don't carry it over year to year.
okay,
So what?
so the
what-
bond should be fund of 4.
I'll put the bond coming out of the selectmen's budget as a debt repayment, just
Okay,
like the library. That would come out of 910.
okay, so
Yeah,
it's essentially,
Capital, in the capital category, but debt repayment.
but it comes out of the balance of fund of 4.
No,
No.
comes out of the selectmen's
It comes
budget.
out of the second budget, okay.
Comes out of the operating budget. It's part of the local that's
Okay.
spent
and
on
that's the
capital.
same when we buy any, with Public Works and
Yeah,
lease
public
those
works
trucks.
leases,
So-
yep,
It comes out of his operating.
yep, 311, yes.
But one thing to note is it doesn't go through the same process as far as coming to the attention of the voters.
That is correct.
Because
Doesn't have to
lease
require-
is sort of an exception to that. So, which I think is a flaw in our form of government, but
I feel like I missed that, could you clarify that for me again, sorry?
because the lease goes into operating, the lease payment goes into operating. It's basically a contract for payment over a long spell. That does not go through to the voters as we're buying this $300,000 truck. And right,
Correct.
and you have to sign off for it at town meeting.
Typically municipal leases are different than what you would lease a car for, that it's paid year by year, and for some reason, if it wasn't funded, that the town had a bad year, and see, I can't pay the leases, they take the trucks back. And you're not stuck to, for them to auction and find out what the remaining value is and stuff like that. Is it rarely done? Yeah, absolutely. Has it been done? Yes.
I have a question about that though. Do you know what the factor is when you choose to lease versus purchase outright? Like if it's a a $500,000 vehicle or something. When you lease it, is it $1 million vehicle? Is it? Does it go, how much does the lease add, the extension of time and all the interest?
On the interest rate.
So it varies, but
The rates
is
are,
there a rough sense of it though?
I've seen rates, and I'm sure you can correct me, but like as low as 3.5% and probably as high as 6.
Really?
Somewhere there. Generally, the rates are very stable. I believe they're considered tax exempt notes for the people that buy them. They're financial.
I'm only
It's similar
asking
to the
because I
bond.
like this sense of, is it as inefficient as it sounds to be?
Yes.
Heavily, we're
Yes.
getting heavier and heavier
Absolutely.
reliance on leases. And what I've seen in being on CIP for years is that it starts to carve out doing anything else because
A heavy load debt.
yeah.
Yes.
The school bond, like as an example, the school bond was a 20-year term, but I think it was. I'm looking at you, Mike, cause you may know the numbers, but it was that payment over 20 years, the total outlay was something like $45 million. When we were really only paying 28.5, it was like, it's significant.
Yeah, and we have a lot of different numbers, so I don't
Yeah, I
remember
know,
exactly, but
It was
it compounds, and even at the low rate,
Yeah.
it still compounds quite a bit. And just like anything else, you borrow, you go and get a car loan, and they tell you the actual dollars you spend by the end of it, and you could have bought the car 3
Yeah,
times.
it's like a
Yeah.
mortgage.
It's your,
That's what I just
it's
wanted.
your payment for the
I
privilege of
just
using
thought it'd be
someone
nice
else's
to have
money.
a rough sense of, how much more it is when you're making that decision to lease.
It's meaningful, and the more we can get off of it, the better off we're gonna be 10, 15 years from now, when my kids wanna buy a house, you know, like,
So,
Yeah, exactly.
I realize this is gonna be redundant, but you're parsing out the difference between, yes, sorry. The difference between, leasing versus buying outright, or leasing versus like some kind of financing.
No, I'm looking at leasing as a financing. Yeah, so I'm saying leasing versus purchasing outright.
So is leasing different in like big giant cars? You don't have to return it at the end? I don't understand that.
Yeah, that's correct.
lease to own.
Yeah, it's a
Lease
lease.
to own,
Owned it.
yeah,
Yeah.
and aren't they all that?
Some, no, frequently a regular lease that if you walked into the dealer and said, I want to lease that pickup truck for 3 years.
Oh, no,
You-
I
you-
understand
you're turning that in,
individually, I mean,
but-
for town
But
purposes.
for town purposes, there's no balloon payment and there's, you own it at the end.
Yeah,
So it's fairly
Right.
straightforward. And you can turn it back in if, you know,
It's really just financing under a different name. It's,
at a,
Tax exempt.
yeah, at a somewhat decent percentage rate. We're not paying 17% interest. You know, like some people could do on a car if their credit was bad.
All right,
so
Well-
could I? Sorry.
I mean, I'm just really trying hard to understand the analogy. So if we're talking about leasing, it's pretty much the same as financing.
Yes, there's an interest payment involved with that over a period of time.
drive now, pay later.
Well, I mean, being the owner of a financed vehicle, I feel like I should have some knowledge about this, but I'm still not understanding the difference. Like, so we're making a payment every year, or however, whatever the cycle is, on vehicles, and we own it at the end. That sounds like financing to me. With a relatively low interest rate. Relative to what, I'm not sure, but again, that sounds like financing. I don't know why we keep saying the word lease.
because it technically is a lease.
Yeah.
But it functions, operationally like a financing, Jack. It's just,
So-
it is what it is.
So it's lease versus buying outright is what we're talking about.
Yeah,
Okay,
yeah.
But and there's some financial prudence in there somewhere, relatively small figure. Let's say you wanted to buy a $20,000 car and you had 20,000 in cash. You would spend every last penny you had in an effort not to finance it and have nothing in reserve. And would have to wait 1, 2, 3 years for that, you know, your savings to recover. Or do you say, I'll take the annual payment, I know what it is, yes, I'm paying some interest, but at least I'm get some other money in the bank, you know, for some other emergency.
well, I know there's been conversation in the past about putting a
Let's-
bigger down payment on things so that the lease payment is lower. Is that like, I feel like that should be factored in.
Yeah,
Hang on.
that's some of the middle ground.
We did that with the public works dump truck.
But
Split it in
yeah,
half,
Yes, we did.
basically in half.
We
but
paid half in cash.
We paid 125,000 in cash, I believe, and then we
Yes.
leased the remainder, which was like 130 or something.
Yes.
in
140.
the, in the short term, I think that's realistically as far as we're gonna take this over the next 10 years, you know, like, we're not building the capital unless we make substantial commitments to really build capital reserve, which nobody's talking about, not even me. But, it all stems, having the ability to do that involves having some sort of reserve. And the conversation will go back and around again. Our year one doesn't have any reserve. It leaves us at about $100,000 in it. For our discussion a little while ago, you know, so if anything big comes up. We have nothing to pay for it without a transfer from the general fund or something, or outright.
Mhm.
We have nothing in that account in year one, because we put 31,000 in. Because the selectmen's budget didn't wanna go up. Any more than it is, and it is going up. And I, you know, it's just, and these are all the conversations we can have, but I guess, let's do, like, how do we get down to what we need to move forward tonight, so that next week we can look at a plan? Is there anything else we need to address?
Donna, do you have
Down
some
the line.
calculator or
I'm gonna go online. to see what's-
brainiac person, one or the other, that you can just put us some very ballpark numbers of what the annual payments would be for the next few years if we were to bond any or all of this? So if you
Yes.
calculated either a firehouse bond, a school bond, a road bond,
As an aside.
yeah. And just so we have the annual payments, it's hard to see on the spreadsheet when you see, oh, they need $5 million. Okay, well, what does that reflect in annual either increases to the taxes?
That is kind of captured in here, Stu.
I believe at least one of them, I don't think they were all done with the.
No, they're not, that's what I'm saying,
Yeah.
so like, that's like year two, when I say that factors in the fire station bond.
Yeah.
So we're, the increase to taxpayer is over $1,000,001.
Yep, and then you back,
And that's,
calculate that backwards towards the mill rate to know what the actual change would
two
be.
and a half cents, yeah.
You had it on.
So, and then the other thing to consider, here, guys, is every bond we make, these are 20-year bonds, we're paying that, it's staying that way, we're making that payment for 20 years.
Well, we'll put it in the plan and see
Yeah.
if the taxpayers want it, and if they do, good, it's all good.
And I said, these can be presented separately, or they can be presented together, or you lump two together and make another one stand on its own.
So this is what I have. Year two, a bond, 11,500,000
Mhm.
for 2 firehouses. Year three,
Yep,
bond.
yep. You also have your two, the 3.1 for the roads.
Okay, let me just find that.
Road
Public Works.
54.
Yep, okay, so, yeah, okay, so that is gonna be one bond for 11,500,000 plus 3,100,000. One bond for 2 projects in year two.
Yeah, I mean, it's nice to
Yes.
have the figures separate, but
The
it's like,
figures are separate. Year three, $12 million for school.
and that would zero out, so that would be, yeah, so that takes years 3, 4, and 5.
Takes care of year 3, 4, and 5, and I'm also gonna take out in year two, $273,500 for school
If,
projects.
you want to bond that together?
Yes, put that in the bond.
Okay.
Which one?
I'm just wondering if that, again, this is the
The
next
school one.
exercise, covered by the school funds, by the funds in the account.
Oh, I see what you mean. I'll leave it there.
These
Maybe it
are,
can
these
cover.
are the things I know, we don't have enough info on that to really know, but, I guess we wanna, I don't wanna present a plan that shows more bonding than we need, either.
And,
So that's why we gotta track those funds, I think, if we can
Yeah, I
figure
agree.
out how to do it.
and what we don't see, and my crystal ball doesn't go out that far,
Yeah.
is from years 6 through 20, while you're still paying for those bonds we just initiated, what's gonna come up in those years?
I can tell you a bunch of things, but yeah, so, and that's, again, we're addressing the urgency here, but we're doing nothing. And maybe we'll be so used to paying, but that will just be,
What year does the library drop off?
27.
yeah.
And they're probably gonna be due to envelope improvements and roof in years 5 through 10. We
Yeah,
gotta
the-
deal with this building at some point. We'll have more road
So
improvements.
Can I just say,
Yeah.
something? I feel like we're already 2 hours in. Not that I need to go to bed or anything, but I want the 5 to 10 year plan is what we've talked about a lot and what we've asked people to start thinking about. But we don't have the mechanism to deal with that right now. Like I don't even want to start that conversation because we could go into such a rabbit hole about that. Like,
So what's not in here, the other thing we gotta worry about and factor in is a payment for that $850,000 fire truck.
So,
If we think the Fund 17 can capture it, if not. Actually, we may not need to, Fund 17 may carry that.
So the 2017 should be off on 17 this year, next year?
The what?
The 2017 truck, that's the payment, sorry. The truck.
Oh, it
payment,
should go up,
It should go away,
go away.
so you'll have a couple of, I mean, other than the ambulance payment,
We'll let that fund build up.
it'll let it build a little.
Yeah, and we can cut that down, but I'm wondering what that lease payment is, you know, what.
Don's got the payments on the spreadsheet there. Over there, I think it's that 2017 Spartan, it's marked.
Finish 24, 25.
I don't even know if that's
It should say it in the first column, right, when the lease ends.
What am I looking for? Which,
2017 Spartan. Should be the 20.
It says on the title column when the lease ends, right?
Which department?
Willington one.
Spartan.
So Willington, all I see is the ambulance.
yeah, I don't see it on
I
there.
don't
So it's
see
gotta be
it
out,
on
so it must have ended
there.
this
So
year.
it must
This
have
must
dropped
be,
off.
it must have
Yeah,
dropped
yeah.
off this year.
It must have dropped off.
Okay,
So that'll help
Yeah.
with those 40.
well, is that one of the reasons that the Fund 17's up?
No,
No, not yet.
Not yet, that's, we paid for it this year.
One reason the total balance is up is that we haven't done the ambulance payments for, last year and this year. Just for the lack of being able to get an ambulance.
The revenue is up because of the second ambulance.
We have that for ambulance coming out of, that fire truck coming out of Fund 04 on the spreadsheet.
I changed it to 115.
Okay. I'll do that.
You know, might that be a 60-40 split by the time we get out there, who knows?
Maybe we can
But
Yeah,
project it the best we can.
yeah, let's just,
Is there anything else in here?
I think it's good.
I think those are the big ones we need to see what the impact is on.
Is there was there anything that needed to be, I kind of lost the thread, anything that needed to be changed in year one from what you guys passed? Did we tweak figures there?
We did not change anything, and again, this is,
Clarifying the school part of the reserve, I mean, part of.
yeah, well, that's not changing year
Yeah, that's a
one.
Right, that's not
I-
changing the money.
I made the argument that I think we should put some funding in there for something for Station 13, even if it is a study. There is a project in that building. I argued last week that it could be a shock absorber for the fire departments, but pushing, like, there's a chance there may be a more urgent need in the next year, and if that's the Board of Finance. If you don't want to do it, that's fine. You know, maybe the Board of Finance has to find another way of paying for something if something comes up. I see no reason why we shouldn't plan for it, other than it would raise
Is there
taxes this
anything
year.
in there now for it?
No, we have
No.
nothing for it at all.
So we did have stuff in, but we took it out, right?
No, we've never had stuff in for year one. They requested it year one. But we moved it to year two, and that's a part of the bond.
it was moved to year two.
Yeah,
So where is that in year two? Like,
it's part of the bond. There is nothing in there.
oh,
I'm just saying, like, we should, I'm arguing we should plan for at least a bond payment. You know, like something this year or something for capital reserve. I don't know, we don't have enough information, and maybe it is just a Board of Finance decision, but where they have to figure out how to deal with it when it comes up.
I think part of that is that, you know, and I know that there's a certain fervor for getting the committee up and running. I feel like that's gonna be steered somewhat there. And there probably is gonna be something that is requested or pursued out of that committee pretty fast, is my guess.
Is there anything else in years 2 through 5 we wanna discuss? I think we
No,
probably beat most of it to death, as far
I mean,
as far as we can, I mean.
I mean, the modus operandi here is that we gotta present this as is, because we don't have enough time to, you know.
Yeah.
dig in for the
But
information
even
to do
if we
it,
had
so.
more time, I don't think we'll, like,
No.
let's pretend we met next week. We're not gonna have any more information next week
Correct,
than we do tonight.
yeah, no, that's what I'm saying,
Right.
we're where we're at, so.
We
have
need
to-
some guidance on that.
This is always where we are at this point in this process. It is
Yeah.
always a debate about how can we have a better crystal ball?
Yeah.
Every year I've been involved with CIP, there's been this
Right.
exact same discussion.
Right,
So has Christina filed that agenda for next week? You know,
no, she
No.
hasn't. and
we
it's
should
not-
have, as it's, I think, well, we can have this discussion next week, but again, I think we need to discuss schedule, discuss next steps as an agenda item
Sure.
for this.
So
committee.
it depends when Board of Finance is gonna take any actions on it. It's rare that they refer it back to us, but it has happened.
Yeah, but it's not even on this, I'm talking about how we move all of these conversations forward, because we can't wait till September to do it.
No, but we need
Yeah.
to see what Board of Finance is gonna be doing in the next month or so.
We can still have conversations about, we can look at the equipment inventory, we can look at the spreadsheet, doesn't mean we
I
need to, we're
think-
not.
Well, I think we should have a meeting. Oh,
Yeah.
go ahead.
Oh, sorry, so I don't know who's talking.
Me.
Sorry, Steph.
Okay.
I don't remember what I was going to say.
Well, I'll say something and then you'll remember. It's real
Maybe.
quick. I think we should meet Wednesday. I think we should, I want the chair to weigh in on all this. I mean.
Oh,
you
I
know.
remember.
And then the next night is Board of Finance. She presents the plan. Further thoughts could be shared at that point. And then we talk next week at this meeting about our plan for continuing into perpetuity.
So the Board of Finance doesn't need.
Hold on, Stu, Jen, remember? Go ahead, Jen.
So sorry. Thank you for letting me insert myself in here. I think we can't proceed on our own in perpetuity. I feel like we need to inform other people what our plan is and ask them to come along. Like, if we can have planning sessions, we can do this stuff if we want to, but until we are included in other committees or we ask them to be included in our committee, it's still just our plan, and we'll be back here again next year having the same conversation. I feel like there needs to be some collaboration in the town committees to understand the back and forth and the helping to get it sold, if you will, to taxpayers, and the urgency. Like, that's part of those meetings should be those discussions.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense. So we're not spending a lot of time thinking that.
So the Board of Finance doesn't need any info for tomorrow night. They have other things on their agenda, is that correct?
We're going to hear from the business manager, except are you on vacation?
I'm coming for the revenue.
That's some kind of vacation you know how to have, huh? Well, she's coming for the revenue meeting to sort of lay out the real, the picture of, the framework of where we are. And then, we're starting deliberations. But I don't think there'll be, I doubt there's gonna be binding votes. I think it's gonna be, I don't know, I can't project that, but I think it's good discussions about what we do with this.
You're comfortable we can and should wait a week before?
We can't vote.
No, it is, I'm saying next Wednesday we meet.
Right, so what I'm saying, they don't need it for tomorrow night,
Correct,
years 2 through 5,
correct.
I don't think so.
okay.
They're not, I don't even think they'll talk about it, because Christina
Yeah.
hasn't doesn't.
Yeah, I don't think it's,
So we have an opportunity to have a meeting next Wednesday. What we would change, I'm not quite so sure, in the absence of any additional information coming in from any of the
Yeah.
requesters. There might be nothing to talk about,
yeah, and
Does-
the
does
chair,
Jonathan present the new format showing the school money set aside?
Well, I mean, I think it's important, only because Christina's gotta present this.
Yeah, I do
So
too.
she's gotta
She's
be able, she's
presenting
gotta
it.
hear and have a chance to have a conversation.
So,
Okay.
and if she has anything that she wants to apply to that, we'll have the meeting with the crew next Wednesday.
Yeah.
Board of Finance presentation is Thursday, so.
Yeah, I'd ask we
Quick
find
pivot,
time to discuss at least availability for future meetings or
Yeah,
high level things we can do with or without, with and without conversation. There's a lot of stuff that we can do procedurally to the spreadsheet, that make this more orderly and efficient for us to discuss. I think there's a lot that we can start to generate that workload to make November through whatever. A
we
whole
get
lot
it?
easier.
could we get
Do
a
I-
point size above 4 point or 3 point?
Maybe what?
Could we get the type point size up?
Oh, we don't even have,
I
actually.
just want it semi-readable.
Can we talk?
What were you gonna say?
Go ahead, Jen, then I got one more point.
Do we have to ask Donna, I'm sorry to talk about you like you're not there. Do we have to ask Donna if she's willing to do extra meetings? Like, cause I would assume these are considered extra meetings based on the history of CIP. I don't
That's a
think we
real
should meet.
question.
That's a question for the board of selectmen.
That is a question for the board of selectmen, and hopefully they figure it out. Yeah,
And feel free to lobby us. One way or the other,
yeah.
yeah.
No, I mean, the reality with
That's
how
a really
much
good
this
point.
is, like, I just don't see, we can't make forward progress year over year if we don't advance these discussions in the year, and we can't sit for 7 months and not do anything
Right, but
without being this slow is, so.
so the pacing of that is important.
Yep.
But also keep in mind, we're still in the, you know, in the full heat of the budget season.
Yep.
Some of us are focusing extra time on that, so I don't know.
Oh, yeah, no.
Weekly meetings
Yeah.
right
No, I'm
now
not
are
saying-
great.
No, I'm not arguing weekly.
I'm thinking
I
after
think-
after the town vote and was hoping and assuming
Yeah.
the budget
So-
passes,
But just like,
that'd be the
Yeah,
time.
no.
Start that.
I'm not proposing weekly meetings, I'm proposing we discuss this next meeting, and we're discussing it now, but like, I think we could at least meet monthly, you know? and-
yeah, I do too,
You know, as a starting point.
yeah.
The other thing I will say, but because it will impact years 2 through 5, and I mentioned this in our first meeting. You mentioned it, your comment about 4-point font triggered it. This doesn't even have all the school projects listed in it. I think it's really important as a tracking tool to have each individual school project itemized on this list as a part of the CIP plan.
And obviously it would be probably 2 pages.
And it might be, and rolling it up for the discussion here is fine, but this is a document that is sitting in the record, it's gonna sit on our website as this is the capture at the point in time, it does a number of things. It helps the Board of Finance and everybody looking at it, see the long list of needs and understand where we are currently. It'll help us identify what's changing next year easily, because I quite frankly have no idea what's in each of those pools, year over year in the school budget. I know we have it, it's hard to,
It's hard to,
it's, and I know they may shift, but I think the projects need to be listed, quite frankly, just as a historical document at this point to see if you have a record of.
I just wanna say, I feel like that's a little bit redundant, only because when Phil does his presentations, he gives everybody a copy of everything. And to have, like, I don't want things to get lost in the weeds either. It's impactful to see the package deal of how much, how.
Right.
And it's easy to pick apart, Jim, if we do that item by item. Well, we don't need a toilet for $20 and like.
Yeah. But I get that, Jim, but this is, the town doesn't get copies of all those documents. This is posted on, like, this is the capital improvement program is what we have year over year posted on the town website that people, you know, that residents who aren't in the know or attending 15 meetings a week. It's important, it's really important to capture this for record for the town.
So
It-
I'm gonna make a leap, kind of like you're making. So if someone is savvy enough or interested enough or whatever to go to the CIP plan, they probably would know how to go to Phil's documents that are also on the BOE website.
I would argue my leap is significantly less of a leap.
or they can even have a link to it. Like expanded over there, cause this is what Phil put in, you know?
Yep.
As much the same document, only readable type size. And this, he, you know, to propose just these projects right now with tiny pictures, you know, he went into a size I don't have on
Yeah,
my list.
I'm just saying it's an effective document if you're not cross-referencing between 3 things trying to analyze it, and it should be portrayed accurately. Which should be the capture as presented. That's, you guys don't need to agree with me, but that's my.
No, it's just that, because the
Doesn't Phil's
school,
spreadsheet do that for us now? It's a line by line and then what year.
Yeah,
Yeah, but then we
but
don't have
then-
control over it. Cause we're bonding things and, you know, like,
yeah, I think the problem is, the only problem I have with it, Jim, is volume. And, you know, like to refer to it or link over to it, where you can see the volume if you're interested in the school breakdown itself. Is to me, better than trying to capture all that detail on this, because this is already getting unwieldy.
well,
That's, I mean,
Plans unwieldy, you know?
yeah, no, I know,
That's the
but,
reality of it.
well, especially because this is in lieu of what, we wouldn't have had any of this if we had like a new K through
Yeah.
8. So, I mean, we probably would have in out
Yeah.
years or something, but at any rate, so this is like, I think he said.
Right.
I'm not even sure how much the projects are, but at least 16 million and beyond.
Yeah, it's gonna be beyond, but
Yeah.
my bigger concern is that by not representing the projects, when this is debated at a later date or in future years,
We can talk
it's
about
easy,
it.
it's easy to say, oh, why is there $5 million here? We don't need to make that payment. We can push $5 million worth of projects back.
Oh, you mean
Like future, like
have the details so that people are
it's
seeing it when
really-
you're making the decisions?
Yeah, but even the Board of Finance, like, it's really hard to have an honest, like, it should be in there. I would fight to the man on that, but it is what it is.
All right, you want to entertain a motion for adjournment?
I'll move to adjourn if you guys are ready. You ready?
Bad. Bad.
Was there a second?
Second.
No.
Okay, second.
We have a motion and a second to adjourn, all in favor, say aye.
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 Anybody opposed? Anybody opposed? We are adjourned.